I always thought the worst I'd have to endure before my wedding was cold feet or an overbearing mother-in-law, not being told 2 nights before the big day that my fiance's father would be checking my virginity. Marcus and I were sitting cross-legged on our apartment floor, folding wedding programs and sipping wine, when he casually dropped the bomb. "Tomorrow night, my father needs to examine you," he said, like he was reminding me about the rehearsal dinner. "My brothers and Uncle Roberto will be there as witnesses." I laughed. Of course I laughed. What else do you do when someone drops a statement like that? But Marcus wasn't joking. His eyes, those deep, warm brown eyes that had drawn me in the first night we met, remained dead serious. He took my hand, rubbed circles into my palm the way he always did to soothe me. "It's how we ensure the bride is pure." The words sounded absurd in our apartment, surrounded by candlelight, folded RSVP cards, and the scent of clean laundry. We had a honeymoon in Santorini booked. The only thing left was to say "I do." Then he dropped this, like it was just another wedding tradition. I asked if his mother had done it. "Of course, Betad," he said. "Every woman who marries into the Castano family does it. My mom, Maria, all my cousins' wives. It proves your love. It shows you've got nothing to hide." And just like that, the warmth I'd felt around his family curdled into something monstrous. His mother, the woman who'd cried with me when my grandmother died and taught me to make her famous Sunday sauce, she had endured this, spread her legs for her husband while her brothers-in-law watched. I pulled my hand away. "No," I said, "that's not happening." He looked stricken, like I'd just told him I'd slept with his best friend. "You don't understand what you're asking me to do," he said, pacing. "It's not violation, it's verification. It takes 5 minutes, and then we move on." We'd waited 2 years to have intimacy because he said he wanted our wedding night to be special. I thought it was sweet. I didn't realize it was about saving me for inspection. Like I was a vintage bottle of wine and he wanted the cork to be intact before purchase. "I can't," I whispered. That night, I left. I drove through the rain to my best friend's apartment, mascara running down the dress I bought for the rehearsal dinner. She opened the door and I collapsed in her arms. "He wants his dad to check if I'm still pure," I choked. She poured wine I couldn't drink and held my hand until I passed out on her couch. The next morning, I returned to our apartment. I didn't know what I was hoping for. An apology, maybe. What I got was Marcus crying, the table still cluttered with beer bottles and wedding programs. "If you loved me, you'd protect me from this," I said. Then he slapped me. I don't think he even meant to do it. His eyes widened as soon as his hand made contact with my cheek. We both just stood there. I left the ring on the kitchen counter and walked out. A few days later, he showed up at my friend's place. His hands trembled. "I hit you to save your life," he said. "Excuse me? The examination isn't about it," he whispered. "It's an auction." I stared at him, unsure if I should believe him or call the police. He looked haunted. The man who'd proposed to me on the Brooklyn Bridge looked like a shadow of himself. He pulled out contracts, vendor agreements, anything with my name on it. "They'll find you through this stuff," he said. "The florist has your card, the photographer has your email. You can't just disappear." My best friend began filming him silently. She was studying for the bar exam, and her lawyer brain kicked in hard. I called the venue. They wanted $8,000 to cancel. I paid. That was supposed to be my rent for the next place. When I told my mother, she asked if I'd been drinking. The next few days were a blur of vendors trying to sue me, my job flagging me for instability, and my friend asking me to leave because she needed her scholarship, funded by the Castanos. I was being erased, rewritten as a hysterical, unstable bride. And Marcus? He was the poor, heartbroken boy bringing cannoli to his ER coworkers. I tried to warn people. I tried to call out what was happening, but every move they made discredited me further. Then I saw Maria, his sister-in-law, at a pediatrician's office. She mouthed help before turning away. That's when I knew. I wasn't the first, and if I didn't act, I wouldn't be the last. I started making a list. Every transaction, every canceled vendor, every person who suddenly avoided me. The Castanos thought they were destroying me, but they were showing me exactly how they operated. My reputation was in shambles. The church I'd attended since childhood banned me pending counseling. Mrs. Castano took my grandmother's seat, wore her stolen brooch, and cried her fake tears into the arms of our congregation. I ran into Maria again, this time at the pharmacy. She spoke in whispers, pretending to compare aspirin bottles. "They monitor everything," she said. "They said if I try to leave, I'll lose my son." The pharmacist called her name and she fled. Within hours, I was accused of harassing her. I watched my friends pull away. One had to pick between helping me and her own law career. My cousin started defending Marcus because he helped with her science fair project once. Even my own mother begged me to stop so my dad wouldn't lose his biggest client, Mr. Castano. I stumbled across our old cloud storage account one night. Marcus had used his mother's birthday for everything. In a folder labeled tax documents, I found unsent emails to someone named Father Francis. He described everything, his horror, his plan to push me away before they could sell me. I began mapping the family's finances. Payments always came 13 months after weddings, shell companies, euro transfers. Maria's Instagram posts became coded cries for help, captions about protection, dinners about tradition, subtle pleas buried beneath smiling photos. Then came the photo from an unknown number, me, disheveled, at the courthouse. They were building their case, framing me. I dug deeper. I traced Plan B purchases to Marcus's aunt using her pharmacy loyalty number. I remembered details from wedding prep and cross-referenced them with financial files. Numbers don't lie, and they were starting to scream. The photographer resurfaced. He wanted payment. I met him, hoping he'd captured something, and he had. Background deals, men shaking hands, contracts changing hands during my own engagement shoot. My brother reached out. He couldn't help publicly. His kid needed insulin, and he worked for a Castano company, but he'd been making copies. Employment records. Women hired, then terminated 13 months after their weddings. I was burning every bridge. Friends lost custody battles because of their association with me. Others ended marriages. But I couldn't stop, not with Maria still trapped. Then came the discovery. Mrs. Castano's sister hadn't just moved away. She'd been the first to run. 30 years ago. I found her living in Maine. She agreed to testify. Maria risked everything. USB drives hidden in teddy bears, recordings from burner phones, photos of buyers, financial documents with signatures and dates. Her evidence broke the case wide open. She agreed to testify, on one condition: protective custody for her and her son. The ADA finally listened. Charges were filed: trafficking, conspiracy, money laundering. Marcus flipped, testifying against his family for a lighter sentence. His confession added context to the horror, the grooming, the manipulation, the illusion of honor. More women came forward. Maria's quiet strength became a beacon. She detailed the auction, the inspection, the sale. Her courage was raw and unshakable. Forensics found contracts written in Italian, literal bills of sale, some with return clauses, prices, terms. The jury didn't need long. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing wasn't a victory, it was survival. Mr. Castano got 25 years. His sons between 15 and 20. Mrs. Castano, herself a victim, received counseling, not prison. The buyers would face separate trials. The Castano family was dismantled. Their assets were seized. Their homes became crime scenes. Churches they'd funded lost congregants. Businesses that had thrived under their money folded. Their name, once synonymous with charity, became a cautionary tale. I moved, started over in a city where no one knew my name, worked odd jobs, found a therapist, took long walks without checking over my shoulder. It took years, but the nightmares faded. Marcus served time. He wrote to me from prison. Apologies, explanations. I never wrote back, but I kept the letters. He'd loved me, I think, just not enough to reject his family's darkness soon enough. The Castano operation wasn't isolated. 3 other families ran similar systems. Trafficking disguised as tradition. The investigation spread. Women began reaching out, those who had escaped, those still trapped. Support groups formed. We met monthly, survivors and allies rebuilding together. Maria thrived. She went back to school, became a social worker. Her son grew up safe, proud of the mother who risked everything. She was my sister in survival, not blood. Federal legislation passed in our names, stricter protections, mandatory reporting, improved training. Our suffering became a blueprint for prevention. The wedding dress I never wore, I donated it. Someone else will walk down the aisle in it. Maybe she'll have the happy ending I didn't. The Castellano name vanished from buildings and scholarships. The empire crumbled, but its legacy remained. In scars, in reforms, in whispered stories that used to be secrets. I spoke at law enforcement trainings. My story, a warning, a tool, a call to look closer at traditions. Years passed. My life, though smaller than the one I'd imagined, was mine. Earned, not given. I lived simply, quietly. I helped others escape, one call at a time. The last puzzle piece came through Maria's son. A USB drive hidden in a stuffed bear. It held everything. Proof of transactions, audio recordings, photos of buyers, documents signed and sealed. The judge read the final verdict: guilty. A system had collapsed. A truth too long buried had been exhumed. And still, new calls came. New stories. New women saying, "I think this is happening to me." I answered every time. Because one refusal had ended the Castano tradition, and maybe another could stop the next. I kept going, even when it cost me everything. Friends, family, safety. But I found something better. Truth and a purpose I never expected. I built a life around the rubble, volunteered with survivor groups, helped women escape their own twisted traditions. The Castellano trial became a landmark case. Law schools studied it. Advocacy groups used it in training. 5 years after Marcus told me about the examination, I stood in court again. Not as a victim, not as a defendant, as an advocate, supporting another woman whose fiance's family had similar practices. This time, the judge had precedent. The system was prepared. The Castano name was gone. Their homes sold, their family fractured, their tradition ended. But the scars they left, those lingered. Sometimes I still think of the life I nearly had. Santorini, family dinners, Marcus's laugh, but I wake up alone in my apartment, grateful. That life was built on lies. This one is built on survival. Maria's son laughed recently. She texted me just that. He laughed. I cried when I read it. Not because it was sad, but because it meant something had been restored. I answer every unknown number now. One of them was a woman who found my story online. Her fiance's family had a similar custom. She needed help. I gave her a name, a number, a plan. She called me back weeks later. Free. The cycle continues. But now, so does the resistance. My story didn't end with marriage or revenge. It ended with survival, with refusing to be a victim, with saving others. That refusal changed everything.